Wario time! Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that any of us out there in the world could have easily predicted how this game was going to end 70 hours ago when we first started playing it, just because it was so predictable. It was going to end with the villain ripping off Castlevania Symphony of the Night. With the villain, when you go in to find him, slumping over in his throne until a bunch of random artifacts just appear around him and take away his invincibility bullshit. That's how the game ended, right? Well, at least they got the slumping over on the throne part right. The unfortunate part about this whole thing is that the final boss fight with the Shake King, and yes, his name is the Shake King, because this game was developed by a bunch of narcoleptic 5th graders, apparently. That they thought the word Shake King was actually a good idea to use as the name for the final frickin' villain. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is the fight itself is so horrendously over difficult for no good reason. Now, if the Shake King looked like, for let's say, the Ruined Dragon from Super Mario Odyssey, or the Fume Knight from Dark Souls 2's DLC, then we'd be talking somebody who would be deserving of a complete second phase health revamp. But this guy here, not even close. This guy is not even remotely threatening as a character model. He's just a fat Viking dude. He doesn't even look like he has any superpowers to spare. Much less he can go into an apparently demonic second form where he gets all of his health back and then completely redoes his combat style. And if you fail in the second form, then you have to completely redo the entire boss fight because fuck you. And that is not easy, as you can see from the footage. And let me tell you that I had to fight this guy well over 10 times to actually get the final victory. And the reason why is because one of his more useful weaknesses to Wario's attacks is very badly explained to the boss fight itself. I actually had to go and find a walkthrough to figure this out. It's kind of like how the final boss of Skyward Sword was weak to the Skyward Strike, which in the entire game you had no idea was actually combat useful, and the game was very bad at explaining that the Skyward Strike would actually create some sort of lightning addition to the sword type of bullshit. Yeah, it's basically that type of bullshit, because the best way to deal damage to the Shake King is when he's about to punch the ground, you punch the ground first, which stuns him for an additional hit. Otherwise, you have to run through this combo that he does every single time, ironclad, never changes, of like 6 attacks in a row before you finally get the attack that actually puts him in a vulnerable state. And you have to do that. You have to jump on him like 4 times in a row when he's running around in this crazy speed to actually get the stun. So yeah, if you're doing this boss fight right now, the best thing that you can do, punch the ground before he does. You get extra hits that way. And you need the frickin' extra hits because trying to get it the legitimate way is fucking impossible. Like, this game is so overly punishing of even the slightest mistakes, and the punishment in having to redo the boss fight is so completely ridiculous that it completely ruins the entire thing. It's too demanding of a final boss fight, and it's the final boss fight for Wario Land Shake It, a game who's so dullardry developed that it thought that locking nearly 50% of the game's total content behind secret levels was a good idea. That's what kind of game we're dealing with, and it has this as a final boss? I don't care how invested you are in the game, that shit is fucking awful. I would quit immediately, especially since the game barely has any story to it. The villain is this guy who is fucking boring as hell. And seriously, a second phase where you totally get all your health back is just fucking awful. It is one of the reasons why, even though Ornstein and Smo from Dark Souls is one of the better designed boss fights, the entire health regen and having to deal with a worse version of the boss you had just defeated in order to finally get the final victory is a reason why the split between the first and second acts of Dark Souls isn't exactly everyone's favorite moment in the frickin' series. It's the reason why we summon to get through the boss fight. It's the reason why people invest in magical items to have a good chance at cheesing the boss fight and actually get the weakness in there. It's because it's not really all that fun. I mean, it's challenging and it's satisfying, but it's not that fun. And here, there's not even any excuse for it. This shit is just badly designed just to hit the player over the head with a bunch of rocks until they do it right the one time, and then they can finally go home, because after you beat the Shake King, you immediately hit the credits like it is a From Software game. The reason why the Shake King boss fight sucks is that it's just so freaking irritating all the way down. If the first phase was the entire boss fight, then I wouldn't even be talking right now, because it would have just been a generic ending to any other video game that could have been slotted in here without the least hesitation, because it's just so boring. The first phase is dull. Once you finally figure it out and keep re-dying to the frickin' phase 2 over and over again, you're probably getting through phase 1, especially if you know the weakness where you get the extra hit when he punches the ground. You're probably getting through phase 1 without taking any damage whatsoever. And then you move on to phase 2, it just beats you to death, because you have to dodge all these lightning attacks, his charges, these magical bullshit things, him just flying around the room, and all this other crap that I may or may not be right about. It's just, like, what the hell were you fucking thinking with this? Just slow down, cut like half of his combo, and fine. The second phase thing, probably still a bad idea, but at least it would have been tolerable. This is intolerable bullshit, and it's a subpar ending to a subpar game. A game which, if you don't do any of the secrets, you could probably complete within 6 hours, which is pathetic. Like, this was put on the Wii, there was very little justification for these sorts of games at this point in time. At least aim for like a 7-hour runtime, and you gotta have enough content for that. And yeah, I know it was hard to hand draw everything, but that wasn't my choice to make in this game. If that was the thing hamstringing your ability to put content in this game, then I don't know what to tell you. Oh, I do know what to tell you. Get all the secret levels, put them on the main track, and then that would solve very big problems with Wario Land Shake It. It's not that freaking hard. The levels already exist. You just need to get them out of being secrets. Like I said earlier, this game is so dumb that I thought that putting nearly 50%, nearly half of the game, behind secret paywalls. Like, I don't even know what to say. I wanted to say all this just because I was so freaking mad at the point that I'd finally beat the Shake King just out of freaking frustrated desperation. But there are so many other mistakes with this game that it's just baffling to me that it came out in such a state. It's these kinds of projects that Nintendo seems to barely supervise that I don't even know why you associate it with your brand. Overall, the game's not that bad, but seriously, you could fix some things. You could try a little bit. Maybe put in some QA notes from the thing in order to make the game better. It's just irritating, man, and I'm sick of it. Like, I'm just done.